Signore e signori, buonasera. Prima di iniziare, voglio ringraziare l'organizzazione del festival, il mio editore Newton Compton e tutti voi per avermi accolto in questo prestigioso festival e per aver reso il mio primo soggiorno a Roma così speciale. Non avrei potuto immaginare un modo migliore per entrare nella città eterna, e questa è una serata che non dimenticherò mai. Spero che per voi questo momento sia emozionante quanto lo è per me. It was the end of June, and the sky was blushing blue, washing London in a bleached sunlight that bounced coloured shadows off the rows of pastel-painted houses. Every sash window along the Portobello Road was thrown open, and snatches of local lives drifted like ribbons on the breeze down to the bustling market below. Outside number 211B, it had been a punctuated phone conversation as friends arranged to meet for lunch at the pub. Outside number 193, it had been the sound of someone practicing the piano. And here, outside number 157, it was the sound of lovers' laughter as they lazed in bed enjoying Saturday and the heat and each other. Outside their front door, Anna Coppinger was ahead of them, all of them. She had already left her home on this world-famous street and was buying apples, large red ones that you last saw in fairy tales and wanted to polish against your jumper. She had woken early and practiced some rather wobbly yoga before rearranging her bookshelves, colour-coding the spines like she'd seen on that short film that had gone viral on Twitter. Then, at the first rumblings of movement in the room next to hers, she'd pulled on her cropped leggings and T-shirt and made her escape. She'd jogged down to Hyde Park and run in the sandy paths behind the Queen's household cavalry in khaki uniforms, red-plumed helmets and clattering brassware, off for their morning drills on their all-black horses. Naturally, she'd pumped her arms with extra vigour as she overtook them, knowing that though they couldn't wolf-whistle at her, every single one of them was eyeing her ample bottom in regimental silence. She had rounded the Princess Diana Memorial in good time, sped past the Serpentine like she was racing the ducks, and outpaced the number 23 bus on the way back, so that by the time she handed over her pennies for the apples, she was feeling every bit as virtuous as Snow White. In 4 days she had shed 2 pounds, mainly in tears, after finally breaking up with Charlie, her boyfriend of 3 years, and she was beginning to feel defiantly invincible. Lauren said losing weight was the best thing about breakups. Lauren, a fount of wisdom on such matters, was her flatmate and owner of the 2-bedroom flat they shared above the famous Hummingbird Bakery. Beyond the prestigious address, the flat itself wasn't much. The kitchen was too small to hold a table, and the floor in Anna's room sloped to the degree that she always made a running entry into bed. Still, for all that it wasn't, it had nonetheless cost Lauren £1.3 million for the privilege of living there, and they made the most of it, hosting riotous dinner parties on the roof terrace and sitting on the windowsills, swinging their legs as the market bustled beneath them, a beer in their hands. They made a funny pair, the two of them. Anna knew that when she walked through the market with Lauren, she looked like a small, dark storm cloud chasing after the sun. It was quite obvious Lauren could easily be a model, if she ever decided to jack in her day job at Anya Hindmarch's studio. Statuesque and willowy, with chamomile blonde hair, she could carry off anything, be it a blunt fringe, sunray pleats or fringed boots, unlike Anna, who, thanks to her mother's dominant shortness and hip jeans, could rarely deviate from block colour, control pants or cleavage. But Anna had known Lauren before she'd become a swan, before her braces had been taken off and her disastrous perm was still growing out. She had known Lauren before she'd become an heiress and come into the small fortune that had opened doors and ushered her into this new life. She had known Lauren before the two of them had even noticed that Lauren suddenly had everything and she did not. To each other, at least, they were equals. Taking a bite of one of the apples, she ambled away from the fruit and veg section of the market and towards the faster-moving current of the antiques, where tourists and design students were already jostling for space in front of the trestle tables. A group of tall teenagers sloped past her, the boom boxes and towels slung across their shoulders, suggesting they were heading for the park. Every cafe table she passed was occupied, and over the high stone walls she could hear the pub gardens filling up nicely with the brunch trade. It was barely 11, and yet life in Notting Hill already throbbed like a dance floor beat as the weekend and summer heatwave collided together spectacularly. Anticipation seemed to hang heavily in the air, like ripe fruit in a tree, and she felt a tremor of excitement brush down her like a breath. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she read the text. "Where are you? Tea getting cold?" She frowned, and not just because she was strictly off caffeine from now on. It was from Tom, her boss, and, more depressingly, Lauren's new boyfriend. The web design agency where they worked was small, only 14 people, so they naturally all got to know each other's business. The thrashing, protracted death throes of Anna's relationship with Charlie had kept the office in particular thrall, and Tom had carved himself a niche, providing crucial but somewhat brutal insights into the male psyche for her. But since he'd hooked up with Lauren and was hanging out at their flat all hours of the day and night, she'd seen him in his boxers, he was making her morning tea. She didn't know whether to treat him as her boss, her flatmate, her friend, or her friend's boyfriend. Things felt confused. She felt confused. She walked home slowly, nibbling the apple and trying not to think of him in the flat with Lauren. The thickening crowds carried her along like a cork in the sea, until she became aware of a discrepancy in the mass up ahead, of bodies parting and air rushing in. She stood on tiptoes and saw why. Rich women have a way of walking that picks them out in a crowd, every bit as much as their Bulgari shades or Birkin bags. It's a certain roll of the hips, indolent and languid, and in the shoulder too, dropped back and slung lower, suggesting that time runs to a different beat for them. Anna was not one of those women. No, there was CCTV footage all over London testifying to that. Only yesterday on the way into work, she'd been so busy texting as she walked along the pavement that it was purely thanks to the quick-thinking pedestrian next to her that she'd narrowly missed straddling a gas mains pipe several feet below ground level. But Lauren's mother Karina was, even from behind. She was wearing a taupe silk shirt dress with raffia Louboutin wedges, her toffee-coloured hair held back by a pair of Tom Ford shades.